I'm very late in responding to this. I'm so sorry. I just saw your comment. And this is not something that I'm allowed to talk about in my real life anymore because everybody thinks I'm crazy. But I called this from book one. So the show frames everybody a little bit differently. I think the who the protagonists are framed a little bit more traditionally. Like we follow Dany, we follow Jon, we follow Tyrion first. So we're so used to following Dany and Jon and Tyrion. But I always felt like the books never started off with that. The books, chapter one is Bran. Well, that's not entirely true. There's a prologue, and the prologue is about the White Walkers and the Wall. So it's basically establishing from the prologue that this story is not going to be as it seems. It's like it starts off as like, this story about like this deeply political world, and then oop, there's ice zombies. And then immediately after that, the first main character, the first point of view character that we are introduced to is this boy. And maybe it's just me because I have always loved Bran and his storyline. I love every character that ever comes into contact with Bran. Like his storyline has always been one that I personally have been watching. But I always felt like the books were making it a point to be like, whatever else is going on, White Walkers and dragons and, Dothraki hordes about to cross the narrow sea on their wooden horses. Watch this kid. He's the one to watch. The way the books always frame it is just like there's all these things going on, but the real story is this kid going north with his brother who he eventually has to send away, and the Reed kids. I think downplaying the Reed kids and the way that their father is so tied in to Ned Stark's story with Lyanna Stark, because Ned and Howland Reed, their father, is the only survivor of, that big fight outside of the, I want to say, the Tower of Dawn. It's been a while. But like it's the fight where Ned and Howland fight Sir Arthur Dayne and like those Kingsguard guys, like the Targaryen Kingsguard guys, the old school guys. And Ned beats them. And it's from there that the show goes into, what he was beating them for and why Lyanna was there and the birth of Jon Snow and all of that. The show doesn't really emphasize the Reeds in any of this. So when these Reed kids show up to start helping Bran, I think the show only audience didn't realize how significant this was. But me, a person who loves Bran Stark and loves the storyline and was following it like pretty consistently, I was just like, this is the kid to watch. I have no idea how we're going to get there, but this kid is king. Because at the end of the day, that is what Game of Thrones is about. It's about like subverting expectations, where it's like we are setting up Jon Snow as like this Aragorn type and Bran as this Frodo type. But in reality, everybody who's been set up as a type has ended up a completely different type of hero, or is kind of like just off the beaten path in general. So it stands to reason that by the end of the story, Bran and Jon are going to flip. And that is ultimately what happened. Now, do I like how they got there? Not really. Do I love that it was like, oh, let's all nominate Bran the Broken? Oh, come on, man. But do I think that this is the inevitable conclusion? Yeah, I do. Really, this came down to me as to like how the books are framed, and because the books are framed in a way where it's like, watch this kid, I watch the kid. The show kind of downplays Bran a lot, and that's what makes the ending of the show ring so hollow, especially to show only people. And I'm sure book only people aren't happy either, but speaking as a person who is like a book and a show person, I I wanted to understand why they made the changes that they made, especially to Bran's storyline for him to get cut out of season 5, things like that. But then the end to go down the way that it did, it's just kind of like, then why did you make the changes that you made? You like, if you wanted Bran to be the linchpin and like the end of all of this, why did you spend all of season 5 downplaying Bran's involvement? And you can make that argument with a few things. Like the Dornish knot is definitely a problem in this whole thing, because we don't have Arianne Martell, we don't have any of that stuff. So a lot of the things that are going to tie in Dorne to the Targaryens, to the plot at large, it's not gonna like make sense in the show because a lot of those pieces are missing, and a lot of Bran's pieces in the show are missing. But in the books, they're not, because the books is the original source material. So I'm just kind of like, I had always looked at Bran and was just kind of like, this is the kid to watch. I have no idea how we're going to get there, but this kid will be king. And I was insufferable when the show was airing because I actually was just as annoyed and angry about certain changes that season 8 made, and like certain decisions, writing decisions that season 8 had made, like everybody else. The Jaime Lannister storyline continues to vex and annoy. But then we got to the bells and Dany going a little nutty. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, we got here kind of, it feels kind of rushed, like, to watching the show. But the books had always kind of broadcasted that Dany wasn't really all there. And then Tyrion votes in Bran as king. And I was just like, okay, D&D was cooking. Because I was right. I was right from day one. Like, do I think season 8 is perfect? No. Do I think it's as bad as everybody says? No, because we actually did end up getting to where I believe George R.R. Martin was intending to go all along, with Bran and Jon having their Aragorn and Frodo kind of roles flipped, where Jon is sent away because the journey was too much for him, and Bran ascends the throne. I could go on about this forever. I love Game of Thrones. I don't get to talk about it enough. I'm so glad that I found this comment and I got to talk about this.